Dear students, in continuation to our previous module, let me introduce communication process in this module. Communication, when you just look at, as we understood in the last module, there are three major elements. One, sender. Two, message. Third, receiver. So among these three, there is a link and there is a process. So this model is all about to discuss and debate on the process. So you will understand in this module how the process takes place, what are the key elements in the process, right? And the main aim is to learn the complete stage by stage the process that is there in the communications. So if we just look at the process of communication involves certain elements or components, you can say that, right? The communication process involves certain components. The first component is, you can see that, the sender. The second level, encoding message. The third level, message channel. The fourth one, decoding message. Fifth one, receiver. So these are the 5 stages, 5 different parts in the process of communications. Here there are 2 important things in the process. One is noise and second one is message channel or feedback, right? So if you see the communication process, gives the space for noise. Noise in the sense, you can see the gap in the different components of the communication process. So the gap in the form of noise is going to disturb the communication or influence on the purpose of communication, and then it works against the effective communications. So you will understand why this noise, and then what is the reason for noise in the process, right? So at the same time, after receiving the message understanding by the receiver, so the receiver again gives the feedback, or the receiver will react to that and then again send back reply to this sender, right? Once the sender receives the reply or response from the receiver, so then the communication process completes. So this is in brief the communication process, and then in coming slides we will understand different elements of each element, and then what is this all about. So we will learn in coming slides. So if you see that, the first important thing is the message. How message actually comes, right? Message is a key idea that the sender wants to communicate. It is a sign that elicits the response of the recipient. Communication process begins with the deciding about the message to be conveyed. So it must be ensured that the main objective of the message is clear. So the communication happens, right? Communication takes place when there is a message to be conveyed to others, right? So message actually, it is something a kind of data or even information or even idea or even the thought of a person, right? After getting that, so he or she wanted to inform this to others, maybe friends or maybe colleagues or even boss or even subordinates. So that happens in every moment in the workplace. So in that way, the communication is the most important component of the communication process. So then if you see the other important elements in the communication process, the first thing is the sender and encoding message. Right? Sender is a person who sends the message. Right? A sender makes use of symbols, words, or graphics or visual aids to convey the message and then produce the required response. Right? So then, when the sender, intended to send a message to others, so that must be encoded in the thought. Right? I want to share my happiness about my result to my dearest friend. So on the day when you receive the result, from the department, so definitely you feel like sending a message to your best friend. Right? The message is, I got all A grades. Right? So this intention you need to encode. So then bring it to the form of a message. Right? For instance, a training manager conducting training for new batch of employees. Right? So sender may be an individual or a group or an organization. The views, background, approach, skills, competencies, and the knowledge of the sender have a great impact on the message. So here, so being a training manager, right, and your message, right, your message depends on the person, right, background, and then the skills, and then competencies, and then so experience, and so on. So this is the way you can just see that the communication is one important aspect of the the component is the sender and the encoding of message. Right? And if we look at the encoding is the process where the information you would like to communicate gets transferred into a form to be sent and decoded by the receiver. So you are encoding that and preparing that in a format, right? So that format becomes a message, right? And you are keeping ready that message, right? And sometimes the encoding with words, encoding with non-verbal, right? And then so that you are just informing to others. Okay. So then, if you see the channel is another important aspect. So the channel here is right, and the channel is that in that way you can see that the way you convey your message, how you are going to convey that. The channel includes the verbal, such as telephone or face-to-face conversation, as well as non-verbal, such as emails and then text messages, and each individual channel that its strengths and then weaknesses in terms of the communication. Then, so once you have a message that is encoded, so that you have to convey by choosing a particular channel. So, right? So the channel, for instance, written medium is chosen when a message has to be conveyed to a small group of people. So while an oral medium is chosen when spontaneous feedback is required from the recipient as misunderstandings are cleared, so then and there. So in that way you can see that we use different channels, sometimes a written medium channel, sometimes even oral medium channel. So it depends on the situation, and then we pick up the channel and then convey the message to the other receiver. So in that way you can see that when the message is ready after encoding at the side of sender, so then the receiver after getting the message, so that needs to be decoded. Right? Decoding is on receiving the communication that happens. This stage is just as important as encoding. So the communication can go downhill at this stage if the receiver is not precaution active listeners skills, or if they don't possess enough information to accurately decode the message. So that means it depends on the receiver profile, background, mindset, and then thought process, and then time and situations. So in that way you can see that decoding the message, so that depends on the receiver. So the receiver is a person for whom the message is intended and aim to convey. So the degree to which the decoder understands the message is determined dependent on the various factors such as knowledge of the recipient, and their responsiveness and to the message, and then reliance of the encoder on the decoder. So this way you can see that no decoding that happens at the receiver end, and then finally the communication reaches the individual. So after receiving the communication or the message from the sender, so then there is a feedback. So feedback is the main component of the communication process, as it permits the sender to analyze the efficacy of the message. It helps the sender in confirming the correct interpretation of the message by the decoder. So feedback may be verbal through words or non-verbal in the form of smile or signs, right, and giving signals, and it may take written form also in the form of memos and reports, or even some kind of letters to others. So this way you can see that the feedback goes from the receiver to the sender. So with that you can see that entire process is completing in the communication. So the communication starts with the sender and sender decoding, and then choosing the channel, and encoding, and then decoding, and then finally you can see that the receiver will be giving feedback to the sender. So with that you can see completion of the communication process. So with this, let me stop here, right? So I hope you understood the communication process, and then we look forward to discuss further about the communication in video 38. Thank you very much.